First to a story that has triggered a geopolitical storm. In a few hours from now, the US president will tell the world which side he backs in the conflict between Israel and Palestine. It's a no-brainer, really. The question is how far he is prepared to go to back Israel. Speculation is rife that Trump will move the American embassy to Jerusalem and recognize it as the capital of Israel. Tensions are high on the ground, and a potential peace deal is on the line.
It's a decision that two of his predecessors avoided. If Donald Trump recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital, the decision has the potential to disrupt 70 years of American diplomatic efforts and spark violence in West Asia. It began with a series of phone calls from the White House to the leaders of West Asian countries. Going by several accounts, President Trump informed them that he intends to move the American embassy in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Reporters cornered White House press secretary with questions ahead of the president's address.
I'm not going to get ahead of the president's remarks that he'll make tomorrow. He did speak with a number of leaders this morning, and he's going to continue to have conversations with relevant stakeholders, but ultimately he'll make what he feels is the best decision for the United States.
Palestine was quick to issue a strong response.
If the American embassy is going to be moved to Jerusalem, this is against the international law, and this will be unacceptable from our side. If this happens, it would complicate things. It would put an obstacle to the peace process. Maybe it will be the end of the peace process.
Trump's impending decision has sparked concerns in the Arab world. Leaders from the region and around the world warn of dangerous repercussions if the US recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital.
Let's wait and see what the president says exactly, but we view the reports that we've heard with concern, because we think that Jerusalem obviously should be part of the final settlement between the Israelis and the Palestinians, a negotiated settlement that we want to see, and we have no plans ourselves to move our embassy.
The decision by Trump will lead to instability. Any attempt to change the legal status of Jerusalem should be avoided.
We are concerned that the move could sharpen regional conflicts. The status of Jerusalem is complicated and sensitive. All parties should do more for the peace and tranquility of the region, behave cautiously and avoid impacting the foundation for resolving the long-standing Palestine issue and initiating new hostility in the region.
An appeal also came from Pope Francis himself, who expressed deep concern over the situation.
Per la situazione che si è creata negli ultimi giorni e nello stesso tempo rivolgere un accorato appello affinché sia impegno di tutti a rispettare lo status quo della città in conformità con le pertinenti risoluzioni delle Nazioni Unite.
There are widespread calls for protests in Jerusalem, and the US State Department has advised its citizens to refrain from traveling to the city. Even before President Trump announces his decision, the divide is visible on the ground.
We are not satisfied with the situation. How can he bring the embassy from Tel Aviv to here? The capital of Israel is in Tel Aviv. You want another capital here? It can't work out. Two states, Palestine and Israel. Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine. It is known.
I think that it's about time, 3,000 years late than it should be, or 70 years after everyone admits that it's our capital city. And also the Arabs, they all know that it's our capital city, so it's no new news.
While the US president can move the American embassy to Jerusalem without calling the city Israel's capital, the move would still be an implicit recognition. Either way, Donald Trump is playing with fire. Bureau Report, WION.
And joining us this evening is WION's international correspondent Simon Marks, joining us from Washington. Good evening, Simon. It's a million-dollar question, but what is Donald Trump expected to say in the address?
Well, I think it's pretty clear what Donald Trump's going to say, because he's been laying the ground for these remarks over the last 24 hours, reaching out to leaders in the region and advising them of his decision. And also reporters here were briefed last night by the White House. Donald Trump is going formally to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He's going to begin what is a long process of moving America's embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, essentially authorizing the State Department to begin the process of trying to identify a suitable site in Jerusalem that could serve as the future home for an American embassy. He is, however, once again going to sign the waiver that American presidents, successive American presidents, have signed every 6 months since 1995. That's when the U.S. Congress mandated that the embassy should move from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. That waiver, every 6 months, signed by successive US presidents, essentially says, we're going to do it, just not yet. When Donald Trump signs that waiver one more time, this time he's really going to mean we're going to do it, and we're going to do it, he hopes, very soon.
Some reports suggest that the likes of Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, and one of his top advisors, who's also in charge of thrashing out this peace deal, is not in favor of making this move right now. What explains the timing of this decision?
Well, look, there's been a lot of speculation here about precisely the impact of this decision on the efforts that are being led by President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to try and breathe new life into the Middle East peace process, and Jared Kushner's own attitude towards this decision by President Trump. White House officials are telling reporters here that Jared Kushner is supporting his father-in-law's decision to make this announcement, even though most observers believe that it will completely scupper renewed attempts by the United States to try and advance Middle East peace negotiations. The expectations here is that certainly over the short term, the Palestinians will walk away from any conversations with Jared Kushner and other American interlocutors, that the Palestinians will argue that the Trump administration can no longer play the role of being an honest broker in terms of trying to bring about talks between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And also, the President of the United States knows that several other leaders in the region have also warned against this move. King Salman of Saudi Arabia, King Abdullah of Jordan, normally close allies of the United States, have both said this is the wrong thing to do. Other world leaders, Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Turkey, Emmanuel Macron in France, have said that this runs the risk of fomenting, at least over the short term, unrest and protest throughout the Arab world. But the Trump administration says this is the right thing to do because it is a reflection, they argue, of reality. They say the reality of the situation is that Jerusalem is Israel's capital and the capital of the Jewish people and the Jewish faith.
We do know that President Trump spoke to Mahmoud Abbas on the telephone yesterday. What have your sources in the White House told you about what the reaction from the Palestinian side was? We understand that their options are very limited at this point.
Well, we know that the reaction from Mahmoud Abbas was very negative, that he urged the President of the United States, of course, not to do this. But Mahmoud Abbas knows that the President is listening to other voices. He's listening to the voices of evangelical Christian voters here in the United States who backed him in last November's US presidential elections. He's listening to the voices of American Jewish voters who backed him in last November's US presidential elections. And he is, of course, listening to the advice of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, with whom Donald Trump is closely politically allied. So even though the reaction from Mahmoud Abbas of the Palestinian Authority and those other leaders in the region has been overwhelmingly negative to this news, and they worry about the possibility of unrest throughout the region that this could spark, President Trump is moving down this path of formally recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. There are 86 embassies currently in Tel Aviv, one of which is the American embassy, and none in Jerusalem. But President Trump will be taking steps today to make the US embassy the first embassy to move to Jerusalem, even though numerous world leaders, including Mahmoud Abbas, say that the status of Israel should be determined in final status peace talks between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and that Donald Trump should not be trying essentially to game the system now.
Right, Simon Marks, thanks very much for joining us with those updates. And we're waiting to hear from the US President in less than 2 hours from now on the final decision to move the US Embassy to Jerusalem to essentially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The most obvious fallout, we understand, will be on the peace plan. Walking the talk in Jerusalem could put this deal, still in the making, in jeopardy. If President Trump goes through with the announcement, he will disrupt decades of diplomatic efforts by the United States for a peace deal and negate all the work done by his son-in-law and advisor Jared Kushner for many months now. He's been traveling to the region and talking to the stakeholders. He's the man tasked with delivering this deal. By moving the embassy to Jerusalem, the United States, for the first time, will take a clear position in this conflict. Reports say that Donald Trump feels this move will be a reflection, a sign, as he puts it, of the changing times. The United States will no longer be a neutral peace broker in the ongoing negotiations for a two-state solution. Some leaders from the Arab states reportedly sounded a warning when Trump gave them advance notice of his announcement over the phone last night. They fear that the U.S. president's decision could not only derail the peace talks, but inflame tensions in Jerusalem. The American consulate in the city today put out a security message on Twitter asking American citizens to stay away from Jerusalem amid calls for protests. Diplomats and their families too have been advised to stay away, and those who must travel will be given additional security. That is how things stand at the moment. Joining us this evening is Jason Isaacson. He's the head of policy at the American Jewish Congress, joining us from Berlin this evening. Mustafa Barghouti, General Secretary for Palestinian National Initiative, with us from Palestine. Stephen Golub, International Affairs expert, joining us from California. And Professor Muzaffar Senel, Director of the Center for Modern Turkish Studies at the Istanbul Seyir University, joining us from Istanbul. Good evening to all of you. Jason, let me begin with you. Do you think that this is the best time for this decision?
I'm trying to figure out when there would be a better time for this decision, other than by waiting endlessly for a state solution. I think it's still time, plenty time.
I'm told we have a network issue with Jason. We'll try and reconnect with him. Stephen, what explains this decision at this time? Why is Donald Trump doing it now? We understand why he wants to do it, but why now?
Well, the immediate issue is timing regarding some U.S. legislation, something he has to certify every 6 months. But the broader issue in terms of the timing or the rationale is U.S. politics, to try to keep a promise to some right-wing supporters in the U.S., part, although not all of the Jewish community, including some wealthy donors, and a big part of the evangelical Christian community. The irony of this is that he would have had these people support anyway in the next election or for other issues. So he's doing this for domestic politics, and he's really risking creating all sorts of storms of upheaval, which will be counterproductive in terms of anti-terrorist policy and other U.S. interests, just for this relatively petty domestic U.S. political reason.
Mustafa Barghouti, did the Palestinians see this coming?
I personally was not surprised, because the whole behavior of Mr. Trump has been indicative that this American administration is not only biased to Israel, but it's so biased, more than any other previous administration. There has never been an American administration that was neutral when it came to Israel. But this man has taken every possible step to support the Israeli policies. And by taking this reckless decision, he's making the United States administration, his administration, a participant in a war crime, a participant in violating international law. a participant in supporting clearly and openly the longest occupation in modern history and the system of apartheid that Israel has created on the land of Palestine. This is so reckless because this man has killed his own peace initiative. He aborted it before it was even born. And he has nullified the role of the United States in any future peace process. And he has isolated the United States internationally when it comes to this issue. I don't think Mr. Trump understands what it means to, what this step means to 1,600 million Muslims or to 2,200 million Christians, or even to the Palestinians. By allowing Israel to monopolize Jerusalem with the occupied East Jerusalem, he is taking a very dangerous stand and a very dangerous path, which will destabilize the region completely. I don't know why Mr. Trump is continuing with this policy, but obviously he has been addictive to abusing others, and he ran away with his abuse of women, abuse of poor people,
right,
abuse of Americans who need health care, and he thinks he can get away with this crime again.
Okay. Professor Senil, where does this leave the peace plan?
Yeah, thank you. Before starting to giving your answer to your questions, allow me to make the two corrections. First one is, this is not the issue of the Arab world. This is the issue of the Muslim and the Christian world issue. Therefore, while you are airing the news just only focusing on this decision will create a drastic change in the Arab world, it is not about the Arab world. First, we should underline this point. That's why I am here as non-Arab from that
Sure, the whole world is watching.
The second one is about it is not a symbolic step. The moving of American embassy to Jerusalem, it is not a symbolic step. It is a very important step. Then will create a dust in the region. Not only the region, but also it will impact all over the world, because Muslims and Christians are not geographically will be, let's say, limited areas, that they are all over the world. It makes everything ups and down and will cause a drastic change in the region. Why it is now that actually it is about the American mind setting to reshape the Middle East, redraw the borders. And before forgetting to that, 9th of December is the 100th anniversary of the occupation of Jerusalem by the British.
Okay.
And then it's also coincided with that time. It is not a technical issue, I think so.
Okay.
And yeah.
So I repeat my question. What does it mean for the peace plan?
I mean, which will create, I mean, there will be no, for the Middle East peace process, I mean, it will create it blocks to the every further steps to continuation of the peace process, especially without reaching any durable and comprehensive solution in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. The moving of the American embassy to Jerusalem will create negative impact to the further peace negotiations.
Okay, Stephen Golub, no one had any doubts about which way Donald Trump leans, but by taking a clear position and becoming a party to a dispute that has gone on for decades, is this a reflection of his brazenness, that he doesn't care, he'll do what he'll do, and then he'll still foist whatever his idea of a peace plan is upon the two stakeholders?
In summary, yes, he'll do whatever he'll do, and it's brazen, it's rather unthinking, unstrategic. Now, I don't think he'll be able to, or is particularly interested in imposing a peace plan on the stakeholders. He did dispatch his 35-year-old son-in-law to do kind of an amateur hour approach to arranging a peace plan. The chances that would have succeeded are rather low. So the one part of the fallout of this that people might be overestimating is it killing the peace plan. The peace plan, whatever it was, we don't really know, probably wasn't going to go anywhere anyway. However, in terms of the long-term impact, it lessens the chances of reaching a peace agreement quite significantly, and it could well destabilize the region, maybe destabilize allies such as Jordan and Saudi Arabia. As I've said, it's fuel for the fire in terms of anti-American sentiment for terrorists such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda, fuel for the fire for Iran's arguments about the U.S. role in the Middle East. So all sorts of negative feedback, regardless of the impact on the peace plan.
Jason Isaacson, I'm told, is back with us. Jason, everyone on the panel agrees that this is an ill-advised move, ill-timed certainly. What's your position on this?
Well, thank you. I'm sorry that I had a little technical problem before. You can hear me okay now?
Yes.
Look, I've been hearing a lot of hysteria over the last few minutes, and I think we should really start facing the reality. The reality is that for 50 years, Israel has been in Jerusalem. It has been the capital of Israel. It is recognized tacitly by the world as the place where the Israeli government operates, as frankly the heart of the Jewish people for millennia. And to somehow suggest that we can continue to live in this hypocritical situation in which world leaders go to Jerusalem and they meet with the prime minister and they meet with the foreign minister and they meet with the Knesset.
Because that's where they are.
To somehow imagine that doesn't mean that that's where Israel operates as its capital is nonsense. We're not going to move the Trump administration is not going to move the American embassy tomorrow. It's going to take years. We can continue to have a peace process. We must have a peace process. There should be a Palestinian state that the terms of which, the capital of which, the other issues of which will be negotiated between Israel and the Palestinians. But we can't continue to perpetually have this maintained that Israel does not have a capital and that it's not Jerusalem. Of course it's Jerusalem. And everyone knows it.
Mustafa Barghouti, respond.
That doesn't mean we can't move forward.
Well, I think, first of all, the fact that there has been occupation for a long time does not make occupation justified or legal. Germany occupied Poland, but that didn't mean the occupation legal. And at one point of time, Germany had to be forced out of Poland. The same applies to other occupations in modern history. And in my opinion, East Jerusalem is occupied. The whole world says that. The International Court of Justice says that. Annexation of an occupied territory is a violation of the law. If the American president was really interested in peace, he would announce tonight that he also recognizes East Jerusalem as a capital of Palestine. Then he would be ready to engage in a real peace process. But no, he is supporting Israel. His policy is decided by the Zionist lobby in Washington, by Sheldon Adelson, by the extreme evangelicals in the United States, as your guest said. And this man is irresponsible, reckless, and now he's going to threaten even the United States' relations with its allies in the Middle East.
Okay.
And he's going to destabilize the whole area.
I'm running out of time, so I have to quickly ask Jason, who's joined us late. Would you at least agree that by becoming a party to a dispute, Donald Trump has essentially undermined his own position as a mediator?
Not at all. Not at all.
We will not deal with him. We will not deal with Trump at all and with his team. It's over. It's finished.
There's precious little that Palestine can do, and we have to face that as well. But I'm going to wrap this because I have to take a break. And ahead on the show, we will talk about Palestine's options and why Donald Trump is doing what he's doing right now and why previous American presidents haven't done this. I'm going to thank all the people who joined us, Jason, Mustafa Barghouti, Stephen Golub, and Professor Muzaffar Senel for joining us. And this is a story that we will be tracking through this evening as we wait for the American president to make that announcement.